Next, we move to South Africa, where tensions with the Trump administration are reaching new heights. This amid a US boycott of the G20 Summit and claims of a white genocide in South Africa. The Group of 20, or G20 Summit, kicks off in Johannesburg on November the 22nd and runs until November the 23rd. But with one major absence. No US representation will be present.
For a long time, South Africans have watched their presidency stumble, especially the day President Ramaphosa flew all the way to Washington to explain himself to Donald Trump over false claims of white genocide. It was a moment many people will never forget, but something has changed. Because in this latest showdown between South Africa and the United States, the presidency has finally grown a backbone. According to a new and unexpected report, South Africa has made a bold declaration. It will not travel to the United States to hand over the G20 presidency. This is huge. By tradition, the outgoing G20 chair, in this case, South Africa, must personally hand the leadership baton to the next host nation. That next host is supposed to be the United States. But there's a problem, a big one. The US has already announced it will not be attending the summit, and now South Africa is saying, fine, we're not coming to you either. If America wants the presidency, it must either come to South Africa or take it without the traditional handover ceremony, 2 options. So now the world is watching one question. Which path will the United States choose? And will South Africa hold its ground or back down at the last minute? Let's find out. Tensions between South Africa and the United States have been rising for months, and now the latest clash sits right at the center of one of the world's most important events, the G20 Summit. If you've been following the headlines, you already know that South Africa currently holds the G20 presidency, and this year the summit is happening on South African soil, Johannesburg, November 22nd to 23rd, 2025. The official title, G20 Johannesburg Leaders Declaration. The theme, solidarity, equality, sustainability. For 2 days, Johannesburg's Nasrec Expo Center will transform into a global nerve center, thousands of international delegates, hundreds of media crews, presidents, prime ministers, and global power brokers, all under one roof. Preparations are already in full motion. Security, logistics, diplomatic teams, every system is running at maximum capacity. And here's the scale. 42 countries have confirmed their participation at different levels, a full house. A rare moment where the world gathers to talk, negotiate, and shape the future. But behind all this excitement is a storm brewing, a political standoff that could overshadow the entire event. The guest list is massive. South Africa has confirmed 20 G20 member states, with one noticeable exception, the United States. Added to that are 16 guest countries and 6 regional blocs, representing Africa, the Caribbean, and East Asia. But not every leader is coming in person. According to Ronald Lamola, South Africa's Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, 4 major countries, Russia, Mexico, Argentina, and China, will be sending ministers or deputy officials instead of their heads of state. To many people, that sounded suspicious, but Lamola shut down the speculation immediately. He said, "We don't see this as a snub or an attempt to undermine Africa. It happens at every major multilateral event. Sometimes a president simply can't attend, so they delegate. In other words, this is normal." Meanwhile, South Africa's agenda for the summit is heavy and ambitious. They plan to tackle climate-driven disasters, a growing threat across the global south. They want a new model of sustainable debt for low-income nations drowning in repayments. They aim to secure financing for energy transitions without trapping countries in dependency. And most importantly, they want the global race for critical minerals to finally benefit the nations that produce them, not just the ones that consume them. It's a bold agenda, a necessary one, and it reveals just how high the stakes are for this summit. But beneath all the careful planning for the G20 summit, a political earthquake was quietly forming. Right in the middle of South Africa's preparations, the United States suddenly lit the fuse. Out of nowhere, President Donald Trump announced that he had a problem with South Africa, and he used that moment to declare that the US would not attend the summit at all. This happened just 2 weeks ago at the America Business Forum in Miami. The room was filled with CEO, investors, and global business leaders when Trump stepped up and made the crowd freeze with his remarks. He said, "For generations, Miami has been a haven for those fleeing communist tyranny in South Africa. If you take a look at what is going on in parts of South Africa, what's going on?" Then he doubled down. "I'm not going there. We have a G20 meeting in South Africa. South Africa shouldn't even be in the G's anymore because what's happened there is bad. I told them I'm not going. I'm not gonna represent our country there." He repeated the same point again, comparing South Africa to South American countries and insisting it no longer belonged at the G20 table. In just one speech, Trump publicly dismissed the legitimacy of the host nation and walked away from one of the world's most important gatherings. It was a move clearly designed to embarrass South Africa, a message delivered loud and direct. But what happened next, no one expected. Analysts later tried to make sense of Trump's comments. Many argued that he seemed confused, possibly mixing up South Africa with other countries dealing with communist migrations. But whether it was a genuine mistake or not didn't matter anymore. The damage was done. Trump had already announced to the world that he would not be attending the G20 Summit. What made it even stranger was that this wasn't the first time he said it. Back in September, Trump claimed that Vice President J.D. Vance would attend the G20 on his behalf. But after his speech at the American Business Forum, he went on his Truth Social page and completely reversed course, declaring that the United States would not attend the summit at all. On his Truth Social post, Trump wrote, "It is a total disgrace that the G20 will be held in South Africa." He then added that no U.S. government official would attend as long as these human rights abuses continue. According to Trump, the reason behind this boycott was his belief that South Africa was committing white genocide. He claimed that Afrikaners, descendants of early European settlers, were being killed and slaughtered, and that their land and farms were being confiscated illegally. These were the same allegations he brought up years ago. Allegations that have been repeatedly dismissed by South African authorities and international observers. Then, as if sealing the drama with one final twist, Trump announced that he looked forward to hosting the 2026 G20 Summit in the United States, a summit he plans to hold at his own golf resort in Miami, Florida, a decision that has already stirred controversy, both at home and abroad. The message was clear. Trump wasn't just skipping the summit. He was turning it into a political battlefield. South Africa didn't stay silent. Within hours, the foreign ministry released a sharp statement calling Trump's remarks regrettable and reaffirming that Johannesburg was ready to host a successful summit on November 22nd and 23rd. The statement pushed back hard, saying, "The characterization of Afrikaners as an exclusively white group is ahistorical." Furthermore, the claim that this community faces persecution is not substantiated by fact. It was a rare, direct rebuttal to a sitting American president. Soon after, the South African presidency itself, led by Cyril Ramaphosa, responded even more forcefully. Speaking outside Parliament, Ramaphosa didn't mince his words. He said plainly that boycott politics doesn't work and that America's absence would be its own loss. The summit, he insisted, would go ahead with or without the United States. Ramaphosa went further, saying the U.S. was abandoning the very important role it should be playing as the world's largest economy, and then he delivered the line that echoed across international media. Boycotting never achieves anything of great impact because decisions will be taken that will move the various issues ahead. In other words, the train is moving, and America is choosing to stay off it. If it were any other country skipping this summit, the world would have simply moved on. After all, it's not unusual. Vladimir Putin won't attend because of the ICC arrest warrant, but he's sending a representative. China's President Xi Jinping is also skipping the event, but he too is sending officials in his place. Even Trump's political ally, Argentina's Javier Milei, is staying away on ideological grounds. But the United States not attending, that is different. And the reason has nothing to do with America being the most powerful country in the world. It's because of what happens at the end of every G20 summit. Tradition requires the current chair, in this case, President Cyril Ramaphosa, to symbolically hand over leadership to the next host nation, and the next host nation is the United States. So from the moment Trump announced he would not attend, one question has been hanging in the air. Who is Ramaphosa supposed to hand the G20 presidency to? A ceremony with no recipient, a baton with no runner waiting, a global tradition suddenly thrown into uncertainty. And that is where the real drama begins. According to the South African presidency, the country is fully prepared to hand over the G20 baton to the United States, even if America refuses to show up. During a media briefing on South Africa's final preparations, Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Ronald Lamola, explained that everything was on track. The declaration was being finalized, negotiations were underway, and the summit would move forward with or without Washington. Lamola put it plainly, "We are forging ahead to persuade the countries that are present that we must adopt the leaders' declaration, because the institution cannot be bogged down by someone who is absent." In other words, the G20 cannot be held hostage by a no-show. He added, "We are ready to hand over to the US, but the handover is really ceremonial. If they don't come, we will just issue the declaration, and the US will decide how they want to continue in the next year." His message was clear. The world's largest economies must continue their work, and the absence of one country, even a powerful one, cannot freeze the entire institution. Lamola emphasized this again. If I am absent and the institution cannot function, then next year, someone else will have a reason not to go to the US and cite whatever excuse they want. A precedent, once set, becomes a weapon. The minister's remarks echoed what President Cyril Ramaphosa had said earlier. Standing at a venue in Soweto, a place once shaped by apartheid's harsh restrictions, Ramaphosa addressed the looming dilemma with quiet resolve. "I don't want to hand over to an empty chair, but the empty chair will be there." He confirmed that he would symbolically hand over the presidency to that empty seat and then speak with President Trump afterward. It was a powerful image, the leader of South Africa extending a baton to no one, a ceremony unfolding in the shadow of absence. So at this point, the South African presidency is sending a clear message. America's absence will not stop the summit, and South Africa will not bow to US pressure. But the real question is, will South Africa hold this position when the moment finally comes? For now, analysts say the US no-show actually opens the door for something bigger, a rare opportunity. With Washington stepping back, other global powers, especially Europe and China, suddenly have room to step forward and fill the leadership vacuum. Chris Van Dome of Chatham House explained it plainly. Without the US playing its traditional role, such forums are even more important for cooperation. In other words, when the biggest actor walks off the stage, the spotlight automatically shifts to everyone else. Piet Krukamp, a political studies professor at Northwest University, added another layer. He pointed out that Vice President J.D. Vance had already caused tension during his first trip to Europe with a confrontational speech. If the U.S. delegation had shown up in the same mood, it could have disrupted the entire summit. So for him, Trump's absence isn't a loss, it's a blessing. Trump not coming to South Africa may be the best thing that could happen to the G20, he said. It's a stage for individual national leaders to make a splash, especially those who see Africa as a priority. In short, America's empty chair might end up being the most powerful symbol of the summit, and the moment other nations have been waiting for. Take France, for example. Emmanuel Macron's Africa advisor, Jeremy Robert, revealed that the French president plans to use the summit to push new energy transition projects, launch a Franco-South African business council, and even honor the role French citizens played in the struggle against apartheid. France sees an opening, and they're not the only ones. According to two officials familiar with internal discussions, several countries now view the US absence as an opportunity to strengthen bilateral relationships. Behind the scenes, governments are preparing potential trade deals, investment agreements, and new partnerships that could quietly unfold on the sidelines of the summit. And for Africa, the stakes could not be higher. Busisifo Siobi, a public policy researcher at Good Governance Africa, says this moment is perfectly aligned with South Africa's broader goal, championing the continent. With the African Union attending as a unified bloc, the summit becomes a rare chance to demand fairness in how the world's critical minerals are accessed and exploited. Minerals that Africa has in abundance and the world desperately wants. She also pointed to a staggering reality. 600 million Africans still live without electricity. An energy revolution isn't just a talking point, it's a lifeline. And with energy transitions on the agenda, the summit offers a platform to push for solutions that could transform lives across the continent. In short, the absence of one superpower might just create the space for Africa and its partners to reshape the conversation. But not everyone sees opportunity in the US absence. Some analysts warn that the summit could become deeply frustrating for world leaders who are still loyal to the old style of multilateral diplomacy, the kind Donald Trump openly despises. During his presidency, Trump slashed foreign aid, imposed tariffs without warning, and dismissed global climate efforts as burdensome and unnecessary. His approach rattled allies and weakened trust. And long before Trump returned to the White House, tensions inside the G20 were already making it difficult for the group to reach meaningful agreements. For years, climate disputes, especially over who should shoulder the cost of emissions reductions. The result? Summits that ended with bland, watered-down statements. So the big question now is, how will countries navigate this summit without the presence of the United States? Will it free the room for progress or expose deeper divisions? And that brings us back to the question everyone is watching closely. South Africa has said it will not travel to the US to hand over the leadership baton. They've repeated this stance again and again, but will they truly stand firm when the moment arrives? The reason this question matters is simple. We've seen this movie before. Years ago, when Trump first accused South Africa of committing white genocide, the South African president boldly declared that the country would not bow to the United States. It was a moment of defiance, a moment that inspired many. But what happened next? Well, South Africans remember it clearly. But then came the moment that still stings for many South Africans. Just days after making that bold declaration, days after insisting that South Africa would not bow to the United States, President Ramaphosa boarded a plane and flew straight to Washington to explain himself to Donald Trump. Why did he do it? What pressure was applied behind the scenes? No one truly knows. But what the world saw was uncomfortable. The meeting was painful to watch. Trump towered over the South African president, both physically and politically. His tone was dismissive. His gestures were commanding. And Ramaphosa, a man representing one of Africa's most powerful nations, appeared backed into a corner, trying to defend himself from accusations that had no basis in fact. Then came the most shocking part. In an attempt to win favor, Ramaphosa told Trump, "We've got critical minerals that you want to fuel the growth of your own economy and reindustrialize. We have that on offer, including rare earth minerals." South Africa, a nation rich with resources, struggling for its own industrial growth, was offering its treasures on a silver platter. It felt wrong, it felt desperate, and to many Africans, it felt shameful. Because instead of discussing how South Africa could use these minerals to empower its own industries, strengthen its own people, and build its own future, the president was offering them to Washington as a gift. And the question still hangs in the air. When will African leaders stop giving away what their people need the most? The crazy thing is that despite all this, Trump has maintained his stance and labeled South Africa a white genocide country, despite the fact that he is wrong. Perhaps the South African president has learned a good lesson. Pandering to the US, especially under a president like Trump, was the worst thing ever. Hopefully, this time around, they will stick to their words and not give in to the US. What are your thoughts? Let us know in the comments section below. Don't forget to like this video, drop a comment, and subscribe to our channel.